everybody, and welcome to the IPMA's special interest group webinar. And I will shortly, before we go to the actual content and today's topic, I will share you a couple of things. It takes only 1 or 2 minutes, so don't worry about that. So my name is Samuli Karjalainen. I'm originally from Finland, still living in north part of Europe, and here I'm representing the IPMA and more focusing to this IPMA Business Agility Special Interest Group. First of all, I would just like to remind that please put in the Zoom, put your camera and the microphone on the mute mode. And if some part during the presentation you will have some kind of questions on your mind, please write those into the chat. Because in the end part of the presentation, when Peter has finalized his slides, then we will start to have a Q&A session. So I will pick up those questions from there, and then we will challenge together Peter and Peter's thoughts, hopefully. And in the big picture, what is the IPMA's special interest groups? These are, how could I put it shortly in a nutshell, different kind of specialist expert, no matter are those kind of black belt, Jedi level expert or newcomers to this project field. But it's about passionate people who want to share with the knowledge, with peer-to-peer networks and so on. And in the big picture in IPMA, we have a lot of many different kind of special interest groups. Here you can see some. I'm not going to go those all through, but if you are interested more content or more different kind of areas than business agility, please go to our website, and there you can see what all kind of different kind of topics we are having. And if you think that we are crucially missing some kind of very, very important thing, please just contact us and let's see what we can do about that. And today we are actually focusing to business agility, and this is actually the first ever IPMA special interest group focusing to business agility. And hopefully after and during this session, we might have a little bit more thinking what is actually business agility and how does it relate to today's organizations, to us, businesses, projects, and so on. And now I will stop sharing, and hopefully, Peter, you will start to share your slides. And at the same time, I would like to welcome to the stage these sessions. I wouldn't say novice, I would say super expert from my personal point of view. Everybody can judge that after the whole session, but Peter Kusmans, stage is yours, and like we agreed that you will tell who on earth are you.
So thank you, Sam. So my name is Peter Kusmans. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm the Chief Agility Officer, as you can see, for the Agile Business Consortium, and I've been also engaged with quite a lot with IPMA, being part of writing ICB4, and also I have to, sorry, I'm correcting some of my screens, sorry for that. And and also currently working on launching a new product for ICB Project Excellence Baseline. So glad that you're all here. Some people do consider me as an expert on business agility, as you do, Sam. So my objective for today is to actually discuss with you some ideas when it comes to business agility. What does it mean? What can you do with it? It'll be a general overview, and I hope that that is of interest to you. If there's any questions you might like to have, post them in the chat, and Sam will then tell them to me, and we'll just see how it goes. I'm not sure how interactive it will be, but we'll just rush through this and see how many time that we still have for discussions. So here we go. Oh, by the way, this, as you can, going back, What it says here is that a project or a program or a delivery organization using an agile process framework is not necessarily an agile organization. So what we will see is probably you might be working in organizations that are using Scrum or Agile PM or SAFe or LESS or Kanban. That does not make your organization an agile organization. It makes it an organization that's using an agile framework. We're going to see why you would need an agile organization. We're also going to see how it would help you to actually work on an agile organization or work in an agile organization, and how that reflects on if you're running a project or a program or a department or a full organization or an enterprise, what it would mean and how you could assess where you are and what you want to go, where you want to go. So those are the topics we're going to address. If you want to see where I'm coming from, the organization I'm working with, you can go to agilebusiness.org, or you can copy. You can point your phone at the QR code over there, and it takes you directly to this. And the Agile Business Consortium is a little bit like IPMA, although it's organized completely differently. But it is a not-for-profit professional body for business agility. So we are sort of a think tank, one of a couple of think tanks that actually are focused upon defining and working with people to advance business agility worldwide. And for example, the last thing we've done, one of the biggest things we've done is in March, we had the awards, similar to the IPMA awards, the awards for the most agile organizations in the world, and the likes of Vodafone or Rail and Transport Authority of Dubai or NatWest or Save the Children, for example, were organizations that have gone through a process of being assessed by us in their business agility and getting a review report. So those are the kinds of things we're doing. We're also having definitions. I'll take you through some of the stuff that we actually have and that we can present to the world outside. And most of it's for free. So so you can look at that website, and some of the stuff that you will see there, you can just use if you think it's useful. So first of all, what do we mean when we talk about organizational agility? Now, have a quick read. And this actually is one of the definitions that we have, but it's also aligned with other organizations that are defining business agility. So we see that organizational agility is a people-centered, organization-wide capability that enables an organization to deliver value to a world characterized by ever-increasing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And what you want to achieve is that inspiring and harnessing what people can do in order to deliver value and in order to achieve your core purpose. That is what it makes an agile business. I'll go through what it means, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity later. Now, if we're talking about organizational agility, please note that it might be a full business or a full enterprise, but it might also be a project and program. So the model I'm going to use next, I'll be focusing on businesses in the examples, but actually I've been using that model to assess the agility of a project or a program. And for example, of a marketing department and the financial department. So you can use the same lens. It's not a definition. It's not like if you use the SAFe, then SAFe, it provides you with a model for how should you create an organization. So it defines. The model that I'm going to show you is actually something that assesses whether or not you are agile, if you should be agile, and where the improvements can be. So that is where I'm going to talk to you. Why do you need agility? And these are some pictures. You might remember that boat in the Suez Canal. I think it's a year and a half back, something like that. And this, people might know what this is, but this is actually the harbor of Shanghai on a certain date when there were some blocks. And we can see there is all the ships that are there. So what we see is that in a world that is connected, where all these lines of all these supply chains and whatever are very long, just something can happen and it will hamper or even stop your entire business. So what we see is, but also because of the things that are currently happening, well, we all know all kinds of things happening when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the, I would call it the war in Ukraine, when we're talking about a lot of stuff is happening, and that makes the world more volatile. Volatile means today it might be this, and tomorrow it might be that, and the day after tomorrow it might be this again. There's also uncertainty, and uncertainty in this case would mean that you never have enough data to build your decisions upon. So if you focus on getting enough data, then probably the decision will be too late. Or you just have to build your decision based on not enough data. And that is providing uncertainty and risk. The world is also becoming more complex. And I'm using, there's a Cynefin model here, Dave Snowden's model, to define what's the difference between complexity and complicatedness. So I've been working for ASML, which is a high-tech company. They have very, very, very complicated machines. They are considered to be the most complicated machines in the world. Still, they're complicated. You can still calculate your way out of things. You can try and figure out, if this doesn't work, can I do that? And these kinds of things. In a complex world, everything's connected to everything. So if something here changes, it might intervene with something over there, and you don't know. So only if you look back, you might be able to recognize what caused what, but the causational relationship really doesn't exist anymore. That's a complex situation. And usually you will get into complex situations when you're in a situation where there is a lot of people involved or communities involved, because communities and people don't behave in predictable ways. And the last thing, of course, is ambiguous in a VUCA world. And ambiguous, I usually use, for example, an electrical car. As an example, an electrical car is at the same time better for the environment and worse for the environment. It's better for the environment because you might be using green electricity in order to move forwards. But if you look at it and you look at all the materials that go into the batteries, for example, and they come from all over the world, and they are not very sustainable. So the electrical car is both sustainable and not sustainable. So you can't decide anymore. And the only way forward in this kinds of environment is no longer by design step by step where you're going, but it is experimenting and learning. So what works now, and how can I move on? And what's my objective? Where do I want to go? And what's the next step that probably will lead me a little bit in that way? And then implement that and test it and then move on. So that means that the entire predictability that a lot of our management systems still are based upon is no longer there in a VUCA world. So in such a world, you will need agility. You will need to be able to adapt, learn, try it a different way, etc. as an organization. But also, if your project is in a VUCA environment, you will also need to be able to adapt constantly. The objectives you have might change. The deliverables you have might change. And what you see here in this organization is you cannot engineer your future. You can constantly adapt by experimenting and learning. If you try to control more, it's like the sand that you see in these hands. If the sand is in the hands and you just do it like that, and by the way, yes, it's heart-shaped. If you keep it like that, it will go. If you try to control it tighter, it will just sit through your hands. That will aggravate the situation instead of improve. So you only need so much control to be able to handle all that sand. And if you try to control more, what will happen is actually control will go down, which is typical in a VUCA environment. But the usual management principles for many organizations, but also for many projects, actually are designed to have more control instead of better control. And that's the main difference. So why do you need to become more agile? I don't say to you, for your organization or for your project, that you need to become more agile. So you need to ask yourself, what's the purpose of your organization? Is that your project organization, program organization, the department you're in, the entire enterprise you're in? And what value does your organization actually deliver to its ecosystem, to its customers, to the people that are working in it, to its social environment, to the network, to the supply chain? What does it actually deliver? And then if you look at that, because most of the time, VUCA-ness comes from the outside world. And actually that is something you need to look at in order to be able to manage it, to be able to adapt to it. So where is the VUCA-ness in that entire world? And also you need to know what are the competencies and the talents of your people. So can you handle actually those, are you people capable of handling the VUCA-ness that's going on in your world? And this is something that is relatively new in the business environment. Many of the models that we see that define a business, that define an organization, even a project, will focus on the internal side of the project, like the 7S model, for example, or the business model canvas. They will focus very much on your organization. However, if you want to become an agile organization, you need to be aware that you can only be as agile as, for example, your supply chain. You only need to be as agile as required by your customers, or you need to develop with your customer in being capable of actually delivering. So if you get a very strict supply chain, there's no way that your business can become very agile. If you have to operate your project in a very strict environment, very regulated, then within your project, there's not much agility that you have, because you have all these rules and regulations, and you can't move even if you have to. And trust me, I've been there. One of the big things to say here is alone, because you're in that ecosystem, alone you might go faster. So if you want to go into agility, you might go faster for a short while. But in the end, the ecosystem, the organization, the supply chain will still keep you from moving on to where you want to go. So those are the things that unfortunately you need to be aware of. One other thing before I move on. No, I can move on. So the big question then is, what can you do to become more agile? So first, you've established a reason for yourself, for your organization, for your department, for your project, that it needs to become more agile. And then you need to be able to assess, so what do I actually need? And we've launched a second version of our framework for business agility that I'm going to talk a little bit about just now. And that is a set of lenses that allows you to ask the right questions in how do I then do it? Where do I need to improve? And what do I need to do in order to improve? I'll take you through some small things there. This is currently our new framework for business agility. And as I said, it's not going to tell you what to implement, like, for example, SAFe does or Scrum does. It will tell you, how can I look at my organization and what do I need to do? And inside out, we say that real agility comes with people, but it comes with culture and leadership and governance. So the culture of the organization is a culture that actually is able, that embraces change, that wants to deal with change, that feels the social security, the security, I should say, of, okay, I'm trying some different things. It's okay to fail. Those kinds of things are part of culture. I'll be going deeper into culture later on. There's also something on leadership. Leadership in agile organizations is usually very, it's supportive leadership. It's not very hierarchical leadership, because it recognizes that the people that are actually doing this stuff are the main assets for the organization, and that leadership is there to support them to provide value to the outside world. And governance, similar to that, it is in agile organizations and quickly moving organizations, you can't have a decision chain that goes up 5 levels and has to go back down, or that decisions that are taken over there need to be translated and translated and translated to be implemented over there. It needs to be rapid decision making. It needs to be fast. So you will have to have decision making at the appropriate value. And usually what you will see, and in agile organizations, is actually there is not a large chain of command. But if you then say, well, you can't have that, for example, in huge organizations, let me remind you that, for example, Haier is a Chinese company, H-A-I-E-R. They are more than 40,000 people, and they act almost without any hierarchy. And they are one of the most successful organizations around. So it is possible at scale, but they are redefining what we consider to be successful organizations and how they operate, because we're not used to that. So what we see here is that agility in the organization's culture, leadership, and governance then enables the capabilities. So there you can see the green circle, where we see the operational processes, where you just deliver, which is your primary process. And for a project that might be different than for an organization, of course. You can see change processes, and you can see the supportive processes. So based on culture, leadership, and governance, you will then focus on how do I operate change and create operational change and support processes in order to deliver value to the outside world. And the outside world is actually delivery of value for people in your organization, for your customer, of course. Customer value is one of the primary drivers, but also to your ecosystem. Where are you in your supply chain? Where are you when it comes to your social ecosystem? Where do you live? Where are you when it comes to the ecological part of your ecosystem? How do you deliver value? And then you can see the strategy ring between the internal part of the organization and the outside of the organization. And Agile in strategy ensures that you're, I can see I'm in between what's in there, but you can look at the website. The strategy actually ensures that what you want to achieve in the outside world is constantly, there's a feedback loop between this is the value I want to project to the outside world. Am I doing that? And if yes, I can then keep my strategy going and improving. And if no, I need to adapt my strategy. I need to try and figure out how else can I provide value. So strategy is not something you do now for 5 years and then you revisit it, but it's actually a continuous process that links what you're doing with the outside world and back. Now, if you look at this, for example, if you have something like Scrum, for example, in your operational processes or in your change processes, or perhaps in your support processes, Scrum for marketing or Scrum for finance, that is only covering part of this. So it's good, but it's not providing an agile organization. If you use, for example, Scrum or SAFe or whichever, or Agile PM, it doesn't ensure that you're an agile organization. The agility comes from looking at all of these aspects, trying to figure out if they are of value for you, for your organization, for your project, your program, your department, and where the agility is needed. So where is the VUCA-ness? Is the VUCA-ness in the operational processes? Is the VUCA-ness in the change processes? Is it with your customer because the customer changes their mind all the time? Is it with your ecosystem because for example, the regulator, there's new laws coming up every single time, or something like a worldwide disease suddenly pops up. Where is the VUCA-ness, and how do you ensure that you can actually mitigate the risks coming from that? I'll be going into some of them a little bit deeper. So this is, for example, the people part. And just to show you, I'm not going through all of this, there is something called the Agile People Manifesto, and you can look at that at the agilepeoplemanifesto.org. This was defined by people that were not liaised with us as an Agile Business Consortium, but they've created this great thing called the Agile People Manifesto, and we embraced this Agile People Manifesto and the people that have created it and start collaborating. Because one of the big things when it comes to agility is collaboration is key. You don't try to think about where's the competition. You try to think about how can we collaborate to improve the world. And we, for example, as an organization, are constantly striving for advancing business agility worldwide. We hope that those organizations that need business agility are helped with the products, the services, the community that we share with them. Yes, I can see the slides will be shared afterwards if Sam is able to do that. So there's no stuff here that cannot be shared. Agile culture, that was one of the other parts I said. What we have is what we call the Agile Culture Development Matrix. And what you can see here is, for example, we'll be looking at how much is the organization's culture focused on purpose and results. How are they focused on agile leadership? How are they focused on well-being and fulfillment? How is collaboration and autonomy? How mature is that? How mature is trust and transparency? And what you can see here on all these axes is there might be a level of foundation. It might be starting, or it might be secured, or actually might be transformational. So you can use this, and actually we have a survey that you can take on our website for free that allow you to assess where are we currently. And then if you, for example, see that you're very high on these ones, you're lower on these ones, you're higher again on these ones, you might figure out for your organization, and again, that might be a project organization or a program or a department or a full culture, full corporate. Where are we? What can we do if we're here to increase? And as it goes with these kinds of models, you don't need to be here for every organization. That would be crazy. If you are selling shoes worldwide, you don't want to be there, because then you would be too agile for the organization that you're in and the ecosystem that you're in and the kind of products and services that you're delivering. But for some, it might be that you do need to be there. If you're in very innovative business, or a business where there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of new products constantly coming to the market, then you need to be very transformational. So be aware that being agile is not a good thing in itself. Agility serves a purpose of an organization in a VUCA world. If your world is not very VUCA, you don't need to be so agile. If your world's very VUCA, you need to be very agile. And as I said, culture is core for being agile. And actually, I mentioned the awards that we had just in March, and I can say that almost all the organizations that actually delivered presentations, not all of them did, not all of them were allowed to do that. They saw how much actually culture is important. Some of the organizations had implemented an agile framework. They really had implemented it. They were using it for 2, 3, 4 years, only then to learn that they were still doing the same things, but just using a different framework. Using a different framework will not cut it. And then they started to change culture. They started to invest into the agility of their culture. And all of a sudden, all the things they set out to do, all of the things that were the purpose of this agile transformation started to materialize. So it's about culture and leadership first, not about implementing SAFe or Scrum or Kanban or Agile PM or whichever framework. It really starts off with assessing, where do I need agility? And then how do I create the environment in which it works? And then support that with processes, structures, and these kinds of things. It doesn't work the other way. Leadership, we've got the 9 principles of leadership. It's okay that you can't read this. Again, if you go to the website, you can download this as a picture or as an A3 format, whatever, a poster. And there will be, we're currently road testing a tool that will help you with questions to go through this and do a similar assessment that you just saw with culture. And what we see here with the 9 principles of agile leadership is actually the 3 C's. So we see leadership is about communication, it's about commitment, and it's about collaboration. And these 9 principles, these are our own. We have developed these, and we've also developed the culture matrix. This is based on solid research together with the ARN, the Agile Research Network that we have. These are based on solid research, and this is actually what we found out to be very helpful. And again, there, for example, one of the things I like about this one is, for example, I have my personal preferences. Great ideas can come from everywhere in the organization. That's principle number 9. Or the other one I really like is the first one: actions speak louder than words. I know quite some leaders that have quite the words, but they show different actions. And if you don't show, people in the end will not believe you, and you will not be able to actually get their culture shift going and get agility going, because people will not feel safe in your organization. Ecosystem, one of my favorites, and this is actually new in our new model, but I will share with you that it's not only our idea. As I said just now, much of the VUCA-ness actually comes from the outside world. So how agile you are is defined by, or sometimes restricted by, the ecosystem, the outside world. And the outside world there is your organizational ecosystem: regulators, suppliers, competitors, partners, innovators, innovations, all these kind of things happening outside, technology. But also the social ecosystem, in which communities, in which individuals, which rules and customs do we have, and where do we actually live? And I don't need to remind you that this is not only the physical social ecosystem, but also where currently with social media, what people think of you, or what people think they think of you, sometimes is of strategic value. If somehow, somewhere on internet, on the social media, the story goes that you're actually an organization that no one should be involved with, that can cost you millions. That can cost you millions. So you need to be aware of what it does. So your social ecosystem is crucial for many organizations. And the third one, I'm talking about the ecological ecosystem. So where do you get your resources? Where do you get your energy? How do you handle these? What's your impact on nature? And nowadays, with climate change going on, with biodiversity crisis coming on, I hope I don't need to remind people that this is crucial. If you are unsustainable, you're not going to last for long. And that goes for your project, for your program, for your organization. You will need to try and figure out where in the ecosystem are you providing value, where are you taking value, and is that all balanced? It's no longer making a profit is good enough. It's, do you provide value to customers? It's the outside world. Do you provide value to the people of your organization? And do you provide value to the full ecosystem? That is actually where you need to go. So to survive and thrive, it requires an organization to understand this and to understand where the VUCA-ness then is coming from, so that you make sure that your processes, your culture, your leadership, your strategy is actually in line with what's happening. Some of the collaborations, so this is the new P5 model. I think it's been launched 3 weeks ago, something like that. So we're collaborating with GPM. You might know of Green Project Management. We're collaborating with GPM to actually build something, and it'll be out, I hope, within 1 or 2 months. We're building a white paper where we describe how the why, defined by sustainability and sustainable organizations, then is supported by the how of business agility and agility in general. Because becoming more sustainable is actually a learning journey. It's experimenting, learning. It provides a VUCA environment you can't predict. So that's where these two actually are married together. Some other collaboration, again, coming into ecosystem, is with lean agile procurement. So what we see with procurement is procurement actually defines the way in which you contract your your supply chain, the people around you. And actually there, I'm working with Mirko Kleiner, who's from Zurich, to work on this part. So how do we create an ecosystem that actually is providing value to each other? So it has some partner-facing stuff, some company-facing stuff, and a focus. And actually here, it's about not creating a one-off relationship, but actually creating a much longer relationship that will then allow you to become more agile and constantly focusing on win-win situations instead of win-lose situations. One other thing to talk about, we've launched Agile PM for Scrum. So if you're using Scrum in a project world, then you might want to learn more about how to do that actually using project management. We've been launching Agile PM since 2003 or something, and now the new version is out, which really focuses upon Scrum as the delivery mechanism. Scrum, as you know, is not a management method, it's a delivery mechanism. And how do you then build Agile, how do you then build project management around it? These are some of the things that are in there. Again, you can go to our website, have a look at what it is. The manual is not for free, but you can download it. It's also in Kindle, but it doesn't cost much, and there will be training available soon. So that's all the stuff I want to talk about when it comes to business agility. Now, if you want to increase your agility, say after now, you recognize this is where the hookiness is. This is, I need to change. And my current way of working is just too restricted. It's not balanced and it's not adaptable. What can I do? Going through the FBA is step one, assessing what can I do? Where do I need to improve? But then if you want to increase your agility, there's a couple of things that I want to give you. There's one of the things that I've learned with all these organizations that were with us with the awards is there's not one size fits all. Every organization is different. Every organization needs to try and figure out what is the best next step in your ecosystem and how to do that. There is one thing, though. There are a couple of things, though, that I want to present you with. One of the things that you need to focus on in many change paradigms are based on rewarding or punishment. Those are extrinsic motivations, and they help you in the short term, but they will not help you in the long term. For example, one of the big things used to be if you go through change, it's you unfreeze, you change, and you refreeze. But in a VUCA world, you don't freeze or unfreeze. You're constantly unfrozen and you're constantly learning. So that paradigm no longer works. So extrinsic motivation in these cases, it only helps for the short term. The long term, it's about intrinsic motivation. So we have to look at autonomy, mastery, and purpose, again, coming from research. What is the purpose that people are looking for? Why are they working for your organization, in your organization? How can they become better? How they can improve their professionality, becoming masters? How can they be the masters of their own future and being autonomous? So those are the kinds of things you'll be talking about. And please remember, grass doesn't grow faster if you pull it. It grows faster when you nurture it. Now these, again, as I said, there are quite some change approaches that actually embrace this, but many don't. Many are really looking for the intrinsic, extrinsic motivations, and they don't work in an agile environment. So again, there, improvement is a learning journey. So what you do is actually very agile. It is experiment within reason, experiment, learn, adapt, grow, or experiment, learn that it was not good, take one step back and take a different path. Experimenting really is about trying to figure out what's the next step. And as you know, if you do that, 80% of the steps will be right, so it'll be okay. And 20% of the steps might be wrong, and you need to retract. It's better to try and learn and adapt than to think about what will be the best step, because then you'll come up in a VUCA world, you'll end up with analysis paralysis and you will not move because you will never have enough information. Remember the U of VUCA, uncertainty. You will never have enough information to know for sure that this is the right step. So you better take it and learn from it, because that's much faster and it actually increases the value you're providing to the outside world, because the outside world is learning together with you. So actually you become much closer. Even if it's the wrong solution, you have become closer, which is better. Change is what people do daily. People really like change. People don't like being changed. One of the this is, again, it's a model of 1962. You probably all know it. The innovators and the early adopters are driven by vision. The majority is driven by pragmatism, and the laggards and partially late majority is driven by fear, fear of losing out. Sustainable change, again, is not driven by a burning platform, but by burning desire. Burning platform, one of the other change strategies, what it does is it increases, it decreases safety. So people will jump, but not because they like it, not because they want to learn, but because they need to. Do they actually learn? No, that's survival mode. Burning platform is a bad strategy for change. Burning desire is a great strategy for change. Burning desire is an intrinsic motivation. Burning platform is an extrinsic motivation, right? So don't go burning platforms. Please don't. Your learning journey, these are my final slides. Learn from and with others. Get support. Don't copy. Because your organization, every part of an organization is different. One size fits one. So yes, learn from and with others, but don't copy. Don't go doing Scrum in the same way as your next door neighbor is doing, because it will not help you in the same way. One of the big things that I found out again in these awards is what they tried to do in one organization a couple of years ago is they said, well, we're going to do Scrum, but we have to do Scrum for every team in exactly the same way. So we're calling the things the same way. Every sprint is 2 weeks. In every organization, there's one Scrum Master that is delivering value to 3 teams. Everything was documented and everything was exactly the same. That didn't work because it's not agile, it's not adaptable. What might work for a marketing team will not work for an IT delivery team, will not work for a finance team. So you don't need to have exactly one way of working. There might be different ways of working. Start thinking, don't start making sure that everything is the same. Because if everything's the same, adaptability is gone. And what you want to have is adaptability, right? Some last messages. I can skip this one. This was the awards that we just talked about. And this is actually my last slide in every presentation I do. I feel very strongly that we currently are not living in times of change. We're living in a change of times. The world is changing rapidly. And actually, we as project managers, we as change agents actually define what the new world will look like. So we define it, we work towards it. Our projects make that happen, our organization make that happen. So we are actually in charge of making sure that the new world that we are building and creating is a lot better than the current world. And we have that responsibility. More than anyone else, we are the most important change agents. We make things happen, and we should take that responsibility and make sure that in whichever way we can, we should create a better world. That's my presentation. We still have 15 minutes. Sam, I can stop sharing.
Yeah, or you can also keep your slides, but probably you can see those at least 3 last questions, or do you want that I read those to you?
I haven't read the questions. I was just focusing on presentation. So tell me what you want.
Yes. By the way, first, thank you for your excellent presentation from my side again, and so on. But the Stefan had actually very good, in that sense, also very direct questions. So who is doing the accreditation and certification? Or who is the body for Agile PM for Scrum?
Yeah, and yes, APMG has somewhat of a monopoly on that. Yes, that's right. So APMG is running the certification for Agile PM, and they will be running the Agile. They will be the certification body for. They are the certification body for Agile PM for Scrum. For them, they will launch it. I think they will go for full launch. I think over summer.
And do you, Peter? So I think you can see the chat questions from Yopsi.
I'm now looking at them, yes.
Yeah. So what are the ways or methods of understanding, forecasting, assessing business risks in the VUCA world?
That's a very good question. And actually, we are developing something we call business analysis for agility. There is already some modules there. So there are several ways, and you can use the ones that you're used to already. But the big thing for me usually is, for example, if we think that the ecosystem risk is very high because of resources, for example, that are unsustainable, then you just get people in a room, you do the workshop, you do the root cause analysis, you do the assessments, you do the risk analysis, and then you try and figure out what can we do. And there are different ways of doing that. But usually, in a VUCA world and in a people's business, and you can sense agility is a people's business, you will use the people's minds and the people's intelligence to do it. Of course, supported by, in current times, supported by AI, supported by data, but never trust data only. Data will give you data, it will not provide you with information. Data will become information once you start interpreting it and actually putting it to use. So make sure that you have the intelligence to actually interpret it in such a way that you know how to use it for your business and for the risk assessments.
Thank you, Peter. Then what are your comments for this? So 3, kind of from my point of view, 3 biggest obstacles in the way of effective business agility are fear, overconfidence, and ego, and the fundamental changes required in industry.
That's an interesting one. What I tend to see is these are important, and ego, actually, for me, where does ego come from? It comes from positional power. So it is power, and one of the things that agility does is it gives power to those people that are actually able to move, that are very customer facing and move together with the customer, or very ecosystem facing and move together with the ecosystem. So managers, hierarchical managers, they fear of losing power. This is usually not the ego of the people that are actually delivering the value. It's the ego of those people that should be supporting people, providing value, that their egos are sometimes in the way. Fear, I recognize again, because as I said, we are finding and defining new ways of how to organize organizations, how to create organizations. I was mentioning hire, for example, and for those people who are interested, you might buy the book of Corporate Rebels. I don't owe any rights or whatever. They describe a lot of organizations that are organized in a different way. And actually what you will see there, although the word agility is not used once, you will see there how really big organizations are organized in a completely different way. And their only focus is we want to have good people, successful people in our organization that are delivering value, the value that we need to deliver to the outside world, to our customers. But there is a lot of fear that, for example, in the MBAs, those management theories that most people are getting are really based on Taylorian way of organizing, instead of combining people together in small teams and just delivering value. And if you deliver value sustainably, you will get the money. There should be a business model behind that. You will get the money, and because you are delivering value, people will stay with you. So it's much more into relationships than that.
Yeah, and
I don't know about overconfidence. There might be overconfidence in we don't need this, or we are still strong, and that is actually defined by how VUCA is your environment. Because if your environment is very VUCA and you're overconfident, you will miss the boat somewhere, or the boat will be parked in the Suez Canal somewhere, and then you will find out that you're too late. So it's communicating, it's knowing where people are, and constantly trying to figure out how can I provide more value? Where are you going, and how can I support you in your journey?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And then what is this? This in VUCA part, I understand, but well, probably you can also read the question.
Let's see. I understand all the different agile frameworks only add to more ambiguity because of all the specific jargon. Yes. And what we've seen in the past, we've seen agile wars, we've seen more like framework wars. My framework is better than yours. Scrum is better than Kanban, and Safe is better than all of them, and less is less is less of stuff, so it's better because it's more agile, because there's less stuff, and all these things, they're just it doesn't work, because they are focusing on some of these organizations are then focusing on, if you want to use our framework, then you should use our language. And there is an advocates or prophets that will say, but this is always better. And that is not the case. So you, for an organization, or you within your project, can try to figure out what would work best for you. But again, as I said, it's not about the framework. It's about the leadership. It's about the culture. It's about the governance. And then the language that you use. It might be Scrum, or it might be Kanban, or it might be connecting those things. So if you are working with some consultants or with some people that seem to know, then you should try and figure out, do they really care where we're going? Do they understand our business? And do they then come up with the right frameworks to support where we want to go? It's not about them. It's really not about them. We are, as Agile Business Consortium, we consider ourselves to be agnostic. So we like Scrum, we like Kanban, we like Safe, we like Less, we like Scrum at Scale, because we see that there is value in every which one of them. But we don't say this one's better, or that one's better, or that one's better. We can see that in some situations, for some organizations, some frameworks work better than others, but it's not up to us to say. It's your own organization that can then see when does what fit best. So we will focus upon culture, leadership, governance, strategy, value. What's your value definition to the outside world? Those are the main parts. And then the processes and whether or not you're using Scrum or whatever, that is only the last thing to do and not the first thing to do.
Yeah, true.
And yes, also, and yes, I hate the jargon. So
yeah. And for
first thing I say to people is what is the language that your business is using? And sometimes to move a business, to move an organization in a different area, or to really do something else, you need some new names. But if you have the same organizations where project managers are now called Scrum Masters, or something like that, and instead of an operational process, you now have sprints. That doesn't change a thing. It changes with people changing behaviors and actually focusing on delivering value. That's where it really changes.
Yeah, but also it's quite, in a big picture, it's a good point, because was it 22 or 21, where I think you also know it's guy from Netherlands, but he was kind of doing research or the surveying the Europe market. And if in that moment, if we only talk about agile in big picture, he found, was it almost 100 different kind of agile framework or methods in the market. And it's,
yeah, Henny bought money, stopped investigating because the new week, new framework, and it was targeted at different audiences, solving different problems. And what you saw was quite some of the people actually are selling those kinds of frameworks. And as I said, for example, yes, by the way, certification is part of how we, as Agile Business Consortium, fund ourselves as a think tank to move the world further. And membership is another one, and providing access to some of the tools and liaising with what we call agile delivery partners is another way. So it's partially part of the business model. The certification itself is not a one-stop shop. It's not a single point of failure. It's an organization that organizes how the certification is done, and we collaborate there.
Yeah, it's just a different question. So how many different industries you had in your this year's awards?
For the entire awards, I'm unsure. We had 11 organizations presenting in our awards, and there were some from finance, there were some from infrastructure, like the roads and the Safety Children is from is a charity. There were marketing departments. NetWest was there, so that's finance again. Capgemini was there. So there's all kinds of organizations, and actually we will see business agility all over the place. We used to see business agility more or less in those areas that are IT heavy. Again, I'm also pointing to the book by Corporate Rebels, where you can see that actually agility is in almost every area. You can see it in one of the biggest examples in there is an organization that cares for people. It's a Dutch organization to care for people, Buurtzorg, for the Dutch guys in here. They're quite an agile organization. They have nothing to do with IT. It has to do with how VUCA is your environment, and how then do you organize yourself in order to provide value to the outside of your organization, to your ecosystem, to your customers, and to your own people.
Yeah, and I truly like the kind of, in the end, the whole change and everything, it's about the people. And then it relates to our culture. And just last weekend, I was in one event where, at least from my point of view, there was one very excellent speaker, because in the end, he was kind of just telling his story in the way that if we want to change as an organization, no matter what framework we want to adapt, and if we want to adapt something, we need to start from the people so that they understand why we are doing something.
Yeah.
And then his statement was kind of that with his client networks or the field he is working, that many organizations are saying, yeah, but we are this size organization, and the training, this department, that business unit people, it will cost this much. And then how about if those people are leaving to different companies? But his main point was that, okay, if that's scenario one, so how about if you don't train any people and they will stay? Yeah, because then, well,
yeah,
people are your like most to be in that organization.
People are the most important asset when it comes to business agility, because people will change rapidly and they will be able to adapt. I mean, there's a reason why we as humans there's so many humans in the world, and that is because we adapt so easily.
Yeah, precisely. Is there any other questions from audience? My main question for that is that if there are, I will stop recording. I think we can stay maybe 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes here, and then we will stop the whole thing.
I mean, I think it was on the presentation somewhere, Peter at agilebusiness.org. If there's any questions, just drop me an email. I'm happy to answer.